My first memory of going to the movies as a little boy was Return of the Jedi. You know, we'd show up. We always showed up late. Never got in on time. You know, my dad was in the military. You can't cut out of work early in the military. So we always showed up a little bit late, about halfway through the Jabba the Hutt scenes, usually right before the Rancor fight. I must have went 3 or 4 times that I remember. I remember we went more than once. We were always late. Like a lot of little boys and little girls too. Like I was just so moved by Star Wars. It became like my obsession. And, you know, my toys were Star Wars and G.I. Joe. I always thought Star Wars was cooler, right? Those are my favorite toys. And it stayed with me. My love for Star Wars stayed with me for a long time. I was in the military as a young adult, and the prequels came out. I was excited, though a little bit put off when I see them. I was like, who's this weird character? Now I appreciate the prequels. Yeah, you know, because the bar's been lowered so much. I actually like the prequels now. But I still love Star Wars. And after getting out of the military, you know, very early 2000s, a few years after the military, I started getting into 3D, this thing called, you know, 3D. And I'd seen, you know, like 3D games, and some movies had come out, like the Toy Story series started coming out, and I started becoming obsessed with 3D. I thought, this is so cool. You know, you can create a world and control it. And I started learning 3D animation, programming for 3D, you know, coding, writing scripts. I became very obsessed with it. I mean, I'd get out of work. It's the only thing I could think about. I wasn't dating. I was probably a year after my divorce. I wasn't doing anything. I would just get out of work, go home. And that's all I would do all night long till I went to bed and got up, go to work, rinse and repeat. I lived for 3D. And I started showing people what I've been doing because I became kind of a recluse. And people are like, what are you doing? So this is some of the stuff that I'm doing. And they were kind of impressed, but also kind of condescending. Like, oh, that's really cute. If you get really good, maybe you can work for George Lucas at Skywalker Ranch, right? Well, funny they said that, because years later, I walk up to these doors at Lucasfilm Animation for the first time as an employee. And that was the old days, you know, with George. It was something special. It wasn't perfect. It was not perfect at all, but there was something special. Now, I worked in this building here. This is called Big Rock Ranch. This was where Lucasfilm Animation was. This wing here off to the right was where they were working on Clone Wars. Then kind of up in the middle, second floor was Star Wars Detours, which never aired. Then over here was where they were working on Strange Magic. And then over here was the cafeteria. Used to hike the hills here during lunch break. Really gorgeous. In fact, you can still hike up right up behind here. Off to the right, off the property, is public parking on the road and a public trail. And you can hike up all the way up around here. I actually took my family last year up by where this tree is right here. And you can zigzag up and then take this ridge line. It's a really gorgeous hike. So Skywalker Ranch. Well, Skywalker Ranch, that's a Big Rock Ranch. Skywalker Ranch really isn't a building. It's a property. Okay, Skywalker Ranch properties. There is no building at Skywalker Ranch. So the part of the property called the main side, which was to the left, technically, you know, to the west of here, we had to go out on the main road to get to. So it wasn't a internal road to actually drive over. So on the main side, you had the main house. This is where George had his office, which I don't think he's been at for a very, very long time. On Wednesdays, they would have, during the summer, they would have a barbecue here off to the left side of this house, right over here. And we could come up here for lunch once a week, get barbecue, and actually eat up on the porch. It was gorgeous views. It really was. There was this annual picnic for all the employees. About the one time of the year that pretty much everyone got to freely-ish walk around the property and hang out at the ranch. I guess they still do the picnic. Disney has managed to not kill that yet. In case you don't know, Skywalker Ranch has its own fire department. And they're a legit fire department, too. We would see them out doing rescues and calls. The main road, Lucas Valley Road, which it's only irony that the name of the road is Lucas Valley. It was actually named after a farmer back in like the early 1900s. Lucas Valley Road is very windy, and every so often someone would go off the road, or there'd be a fire at one of the nearby houses, and Skywalker Ranch Fire Department would actually be dispatched. This is up on the hill. That's the main house off in the distance. You can see all the cars parked for one of the picnics. Now, the building here on the lower right-hand corner is the tech building, a.k.a. Skywalker Sound. Went to lots of screenings there. That was always... I really miss that. That was a great time. They had this theater there that was tuned for their THX mixes. And so if it was a movie that they mixed, the sound, I can't describe it. It's a lot of people in theaters like, oh, this theater's amazing. There's so much bass and you can feel it in the seats. Bass doesn't mean quality sound. I'm sorry, but it does not. The sound here was perfection. It was amazing. And if you knew the right spot to sit in the theater, like obviously in the center, and I can't remember what row it was. There's like 2 or 3 rows and select seats right in the middle. If you scored one of those, you sat perfectly in the middle and you got the best sound mix ever. It was, I can't count the movies I've screened in that theater. Big releases, indie releases. Amazing experience. I really do miss that. Building here off in the distance, the gray building, is the archive building. Again, the main house looking over is an Ewok pond. Yeah, I think that was Ewok Pond. Well, we could actually swim in that during the company event, but it's always kind of mucky and warm, which I didn't really like. It was a amazing time. Probably the other thing I really loved was the guest speakers. There was one that stands out to me. Frank Oz. This one was just the best, especially the Q&A. Somebody asked him, if you could say anything to the makers of the Muppets today, what would you say? And he said, oh, I'd tell them that Cookie Monster shouldn't be eating frickin' vegetables, which I never knew was a thing. But apparently there was episodes where Cookie Monster ate vegetables to promote, healthy living or whatever. And Frank didn't agree with that. Frank also had an interesting story. He would talk about this book he has. And this book contains a backstory for every character he's ever done voices for, except for one. Because he would say, I would get on a set and I would ask the writers, what were the voices, or what's the backstory for this character? And they go, well, there's no backstory. It's a Muppet. And he goes, no, it's a character. It needs a backstory. So he said, in order to find the voice, he goes, I would invent a backstory for these characters. Except for one. And somebody asked him what that one character was. He goes, oh, Animal. It's Animal. Animal doesn't get a backstory. In case you're too young to know what I'm talking about, Animal was this psychotic drummer in the Muppets. We don't really know what species of animal he was. But he never really spoke very clearly. He was just a complete nut job and banged on drums. He doesn't have a backstory because a backstory would not make sense for Animal. So he never made one. But he treated it like it was nothing, right? So he's like, some book, it's in my closet. My girlfriend keeps finding it. I'm just thinking this thing needs to be in a library, in an archive, protected. This is the backstory to so many characters that inspired so many artists and creatives. It's, yeah, I really enjoyed the guest speakers like him. He was the best. But being on George wasn't perfect. George kind of treated it like it was a hobby. He never had a roadmap ever. And people ask, people want to buy homes. They want to settle down with their families. And they would ask, not George, we weren't allowed to speak to George directly. That was forbidden. Even on 2 occasions I did, it was awkward. But when we did Q&As with the management, the upper management, like the vice president, people asked, what's the 1-year plan? What's the 5-year plan? They never had one because George wasn't a businessman. He was just having fun. So if you want to know if you're going to have a job for the next 5 years, well, if George has fun for the next 5 years, you'll have a job. That's kind of how it went. If George decided he didn't want to work on anything, then you wouldn't have a job. That's pretty much how it went. So that part wasn't great. And then Disney came in, right? And I was there when that happened and watched 90% of my coworkers get laid off. I had the lucky enough to survive that layoff. I'll use the word lucky very loosely. But I was there during the transition. And I'll admit, early on, there was some hope. There was hope because they sat down with KK in a presentation of the company, and they showed us something we'd never seen before under George, and that was a 10-year plan. That's important. It's like, okay, the plan, it means there might be work, right? That, I actually felt really good about that. They said there are going to be 3 more movies. We were all really excited. 1 as fans, 2 as employees. More movies means work. They started talking about spinoffs. The new episodic, which was Rebels, because they canceled Clone Wars and Detours. They finished Strange Magic, though. They had to. But it felt like there was some promise. Now, I left some years after that. I've been gone for about 7 years now. And I talked about this in another video. When the 3rd set of trilogies came out, the whole the Force Awakens, and the whole thing with Rey. My goodness, I try to block a lot of it out. I actually don't remember the names of all those episodes that came out under KK. I just kind of blocked them out. But I remember going to the crew screenings and coming out not really feeling it, right? And then having the audacity, the nerve at work to say, yeah, I didn't really like it. And then starting to find out who the real fanboys are. And I'll tell you what, the biggest fanboys, some of the biggest fanboys you'll find and the most toxic, work there. Because you weren't allowed to not like it. If you had an opinion, you really best keep it to yourself. People would make you very, very uncomfortable. And, when I left the company, I definitely wanted to move on from the industry. There was a personal issue I had. Really was not happy with the culture, the life there. It had changed a lot. And so when I left, I hadn't really become an ex-fan yet. I was not watching any of the new content when I first left. And that was, I admit, a very personal thing. They say you don't want to know how the sausage is made. Well, not only do I know how the sausage is made, I know the people making it very well. And seeing their names and credits, it just bothered me. I just was like, I can't support these people. And so I just stayed away. I wasn't watching any of the new content. And then a few years goes by and I just stopped caring. But because I used to watch a lot of Star Wars content, YouTube still has in the algorithm that I like Star Wars because of all my old bookmarks and everything, relating to Star Wars when I was really into it. So I would still get fed content. And I have stayed on top of like the gossip. I have not watched anything. A big reason is I cannot bring myself to pay for Disney Plus. I don't care. I have opinions, which I'm going to talk about a little bit about the new content. And people will say that you shouldn't have opinion if you haven't watched the shows, which I do agree with. However, having been personally involved with the franchise, I think I do have some position for an opinion, but I cannot bring myself to subscribe to Disney Plus, even to watch the shows, to have an opinion about the shows. I worked a lot of absurd overtime with no overtime pay, because I was suckered into salary positions like a lot of people there. And I don't really feel compelled to give Disney any more of my money, because I kind of feel that that I'm owed a little bit. Yeah, I think we all do. We worked a lot of overtime. We weren't given raises. I mean, geez, granted, we got a payout, but the whole collusion scandal, this happened before Disney. But let me bring this up. You might not know about this. So let me bring this up here. Okay. Switch screens. So there was a collusion case. Here's something from the Department of Justice. Here. Let me bring up this link instead. So for a long time, if anything can load, there was a collusion going on where a lot of the studios had agreed to not poach talent from each other to drive down the wages of the employees. Eventually, there was a settlement. I did get a little check. That was nice. And I got some money for it. But anyways, after everything I've been through, I am not about to give Disney 5, 10, 15, whatever a month is. I have no idea what it is. I will not pay for it. So that means I have not seen the episodes. I'm relying on what YouTubers are talking about. And I've listened to a lot of them. So it's not like I just listen to one and be like, yep, I hate that episode too. Like I would listen to a lot of them say, and it's like, okay, they're all saying really the same thing. They're describing the scenes. And yeah, I wouldn't like that either. So it's been really interesting. The latest stuff, though, over the ACOLYTE is amazing. We're going to have some fun here. It is interesting having been on the inside and now being out, and then just hearing the opinions of people. Because like I said, when I was still in, I was starting to not really feel what was going on. I wasn't agreeing with the direction. So I'm not really surprised where things are at. Now, looking back, I didn't know they would go as far as they did. They've definitely doubled down. But it is interesting to actually hear what the fans have to say on the outside, people who weren't in the company.
We're chanting news from this.
Let's see. I do like Jeremy at Geeks and Gamers.
Good morning, Star Wars. This has never happened. We have never talked about Star Wars being dead on this channel. This is the absolute first time ever. You know what I can't stand? I can't stand when YouTube, like, it won't start the stream and then it starts and I hear myself, it drives me crazy. So I find
today is a gap and I'm kind of waiting on it.
Yeah, that's happening. Do we know?
Got pushed back a day or two that I don't hear people. I know you didn't see that live stream. I'm trying to find
where they're talking about the ACOLYTE.
Sat back.
So in the ACOLYTE, like many shows are putting out, I've just had no interest in watching. Like I said, I'm over it now. I don't really care they're tanking the franchise, honestly. But there's part of me that's still, I'm interested. I think more from an entertainment perspective, just to see how upset people were getting, just because I remember, from like I said, personal experience being in the studio and being like, oh, I don't know if I really liked the character Ray, and just like my coworkers just losing their ever living shit at me. I really getting pissed off at me because I didn't like it. And it wasn't, granted, some of my coworkers worked on it. But that wasn't a big deal. I've had plenty of people work on projects, and I could tell them the project, I didn't like the project, and they'd be cool with it. Like I had friends that worked on that Avatar from M. Night, and they would trash the project. They'd be like, I'm not going to screening, screw that movie. I give it 3 months of my life. It's not getting 2 more hours, right? But when it came to Star Wars, well, that was taboo, right? That was big taboo.
And had like the ER, like, and it's being aired.
I'll get to it talking about this.
Before we even went,
I feel good.
$100 later on Keep Up the Great, focused in on. There was always this narrative that Dave Filoni was the savior of Star Wars, and if he ever got control, blah, 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 blah. And my video, one was fine. I know Filoni and Favreau was involved in that, but there was always this narrative that Dave Filoni was the savior of Star Wars, and if he ever got control, blah, blah, blah.
I remember hearing that from fans, and just part of me dying on the inside. It's like, you have no idea. But, people had to figure it out for themselves. They had to do it. I couldn't tell them.
Blah, blah, blah.
And I get it. Like, people, they wanted one more bit of hope to hold on to, that Star Wars would be saved. And I think, in Clone Wars, we put out some good episodes. I think Rebels, we put out some good episodes. We put out some dumb ones, definitely. I'll critique my own work. But, yeah, people really thought Dave was the savior, was going to turn this all around. It's like, you don't know what I know. I was never optimistic this would ever happen the way all of you thought it was going to.
And my video was talking about the people that still believe that Filoni might be the savior. He's not. He is the villain now of Star Wars.
He never was
the villain. He has stabbed George Lucas in the back, and he is responsible for the episode we saw last night, just like he's been responsible for so much else. He is the creative director. And I know people are still trying to justify Filoni doesn't have any power. Filoni has power. No. Filoni has influence. Filoni is...
Yeah, he is right on that. He is absolutely right on that. He has had power for a long time. He's even had power back to the Clone Wars days to carefully push back on certain decisions when it came to Clone Wars, because, definitely early on, George drove it all, but there was definitely a point, and I can't really tell you what season it was, where Filoni, and rightfully so, right? If you're supervising director, you need to stand up for the project at some point. So he did the right thing in standing up to George.
Involved in all of this shit. Yes, Kathleen Kennedy is still a problem. She's still a primary problem. I'm not saying that she isn't, but it's time to actually admit that this guy is not the savior of Star Wars.
I've known that.
He's been at the forefront of the marketing for the Acolyte. He's putting his face at the forefront of this film, this series.
He is.
Yeah.
It's obvious. You gotta see. It's like, it's obvious. He is. He's George Lucas's replacement, honestly.
Yeah, it's
well, kind of. I mean, people keep saying it's George Lucas's replacement. Listen, George just at one point decided he was done, right? And I don't think he ever really cared about his replacement. No, did he teach Filoni a lot? Sure. This whole Filoni's replacement for George, there was only ever one George. Not that George is a perfect storyteller. Definitely had his mistakes in the past, red tails. But I never considered Filoni to be the next George Lucas.
The term putting someone over is kind of something that is discussed in the wrestling business, okay? You put someone over. He is absolutely putting Leslie Headland over by being on interviews with her, making videos with her. He's there to try to justify.
I haven't seen any of these. I try to stay so far out of it. But yeah, if he was in there, accountability.
Leslie Headland and the Acolyte. if you're going to put your name at the forefront of this, and if you're I think his official title's like creative director or whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah.
He's at the forefront of it. He doesn't get a pass for this. People have to stop giving this man the pass. So we did get episode 3 last night of The Acolyte, and a lot of discussion about what was going to happen with this episode was out there. Obviously, Chris Gore, who's in the chat right now, talked about some of the decisions that's going to be made. You basically have going to happen in the future.
Skip forward a bit.
If it's not lore breaking, to rewrite the history of Star Wars, rewrite the meaning of the Force, to create children. That's at the core of this episode right here.
Yeah, but Jeremy, it's tackling today's topics, okay? All right. Lesbians.
Yeah, I saw this a long time ago. They were definitely starting to blur the lines between reality, our world, and the world of Star Wars. I saw the indications of this a long time ago. I didn't know they would take it this far, but I'm really not surprised by everything I've been learning about this Acolyte series. I'm not surprised.
Want to make babies, all right? They're tackling today's it's Pride Month. Come on, give them a break.
It is.
And that clip.
It is. Oh, I forgot.
That put out is what a.
Yeah.
Where they're doing their dance. La, 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 la.
Oh, that dance is horrible. They show it on here. Actually, what I can do is, hold on. Okay, here it is. I saw this the other night, and I was like, okay, granted, I have not seen the series at all, but I think I've just seen enough from this, so. Oh my God. This is. Okay, I can't. That was horrible.
All for one. La, 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 la. All for two. La, 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 la. I'm pregnant. How about you? Literally what it was.
I'm pregnant. How about you?
That's literally what it was. The best part was during that when they were chanting.
Oh, this is great.
Clipped it out. Look at this.
Now, don't get me wrong. I've always liked the idea of exploring the Star Wars universe beyond the Jedi, right? All the other cultures and worlds out there, and how they were, impacted by the main story. So that part I've always been for. It's just the direction they went with. No, it's awful.
Keep playing it. I want to see what happens.
Hey, he just sits up and he just is like, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Yeah. That's literally all he's just like laughing at it. But like, if you didn't know that, I don't know. I don't think we could play the clip, but
no, we can't. We probably
this is
can't.
it right here.
Yeah.
The power of one. The power of two. I just got pregnant. How about you?
Dude. And then like just on eliminate all the lore issues. Yeah. Okay. It's such a bad episode. It's so boring. So if you went into this episode and you were like, I don't know anything about Star Wars. I don't know anything about the Force. I don't know anything about Anakin. I don't know anything about Plagueis. I don't know anything about any of this shit. I just want to watch this episode and see it's fucking horrific.
Oh, it's bad. The dialogue is terrible.
How did the witches die?
So
how?
The two twins with the horrific dialogue. The Jedi are bad. The Jedi are good. It's not out in front of fortress on died, I guess. They didn't get burned up. They're all just laying on the ground. Maybe they just breathed in smoke or something. I don't know. It was crazy. One freaking candle. She throws it at the door and the whole place goes.
So this little context will help. Who had a really great video about this? Was it The Critical?
Power of one.
Yes, yes.
Power of two. The power of many.
Yes, yes.
Yes, Queen.
Episode 3 of The Acolyte was, without a doubt, one of the most devastatingly embarrassing spectacles I think I've ever witnessed on TV. 40 solid minutes of relentless, unadulterated, unapologetic, unaware cringe, distilled down to its purest and most toxic form. A show made...
Or as he talks about the candle, this part. See, like, I don't have to watch the show to know there's really bad scenes. So, where is he talks about? Right.
Unfortunately, it all goes wrong when strong female character gets found out in a matter of seconds and decides to just pass the test anyway. So strong female antagonist does the smart thing and locks her in her room and then sets her journal on fire in the middle of a stone hallway in a fortress that's made predominantly of stone. I mention the fact that it's made of stone so often because the fire quickly spreads and then engulfs the entire fortress, because apparently in this universe stone is more combustible than a 1990s shell.
Yeah, stone and like obviously all the metal definitely makes sense.
Oh yeah, and the communist lesbian space witches all die from boredom or
they'll just like die from the smoke in the same room, apparently. Yeah, I mean you see little tidbits like this, and it's like I don't need to see the whole thing, honestly, to know that there's really bad writing involved. This is just so cringy. Outside the blasted song, that was just awful.
Something. Then strong female antagonist falls into a pit and strong female character gets rescued by Squid Game guy who agrees to take her to Coruscant and train her as a Jedi. But wouldn't you know it, strong female antagonist actually...
yeah. Was there any others that were really good? I mean, heel versus babyface is always amusing.
I think it's safe to say that everybody hates The Acolyte, and season 1, episode 3, sorry, I'll rephrase that. The only season this show's ever gonna get, episode 3, was an absolute unmitigated disaster, which has been mocked the internet over. So, let's join in. With Star Wars because Leslie Headland wanted to Leslie Headland it.
Put a chicken in, make her gay.
But also,
it was
a complete and utter waste of time because all it told us is exactly what we found out from episodes 1 and 2. It hasn't shown us the alternative angle, which will come later. So an episode that just wasted our time on space lesbians from outer space. Not only that, but
he has the best tangents.
But interact with this post and have a good chuckle at what an absolute dumpster fire this episode was. But even Gary's massive tweet paled into insignificance next to my nerdy home, aka our own Steph from Geeks and Gamers, as she posted, "This thick-necked bitch just ruined Star Wars for anyone who had a little bit of hope left in the franchise."
Ouch. Ouch. Lastly, if you haven't seen Snarky J, she's really amusing.
Episode 3? That was embarrassing. Hi y'all, Snarky J Cosplay here. As of the time of this video's recording, I am currently working to find a therapist to heal from episode 3 of The Acolyte. It dropped last night.
Even the women hate it.
I had a good enough and productive enough day that I said, no, I'm not ruining my night with this. So I saved it. I waited until this morning, and I was kind of curious to see what a train wreck episode 3 could have in store for me. Because if 1 and 2 were as absolutely atrocious as I felt they were, and yet people were warning me about episode 3, I was so curious as to what was wrong with this one. And to put it to you simply, everything is wrong with episode 3 of The Acolyte. Where should we begin?
I carried them.
Episode 3
What
of
the
The
hell?
Acolyte is
So honestly, between clips like that and this overwhelmingly negative responses by the fans, why on earth would I want to subscribe to Disney Plus to actually watch this so I could have a informed opinion? My opinion's informed enough. It used to be kind of nice to have that part of my life in the resume, made for a good icebreaker, especially when I got out of the industry. I always found it was a good icebreaker because you could find a Star Wars fan almost anywhere, right? Kick over a rock, there's a Star Wars fan. So it was nice to have that. Now, it's kind of embarrassing, actually. It really actually kind of is embarrassing. I mean, I don't really have any. Do I have anything lying around? Let me check here. Do I have any crew gear left? I don't see anything. I think I got rid of everything. Thought I had a couple little items left. I'm not seeing them anywhere. Yeah, I mean, a long time ago, I got rid of my crew gear. Big reason was I got tired of dealing with fans being asked tons of questions I didn't want to answer. But there, like I said, when I left, there was a little bit of bitterness. Really wasn't happy with how my last couple of years went in that place. And me not watching any of the new content was for, as I said, for personal reasons. Now I'm actually just kind of enjoying the train wreck because it's no longer personal. Like, I've moved on. I've moved forward. I've rebuilt my resume. Just have a whole different career path, different life. And I did get rid of a lot of my crew gear. In fact, it's kind of funny was when I was selling like all my crew jackets, a majority of the crew gear that I sold to current employees. Remember I told you that some of the most diehard and toxic fanboys you'll find work at the company. Most of the items, the jackets that I sold, crew gear, were sold to people that were working there. So I'd see the names and I'd look at the address, right? It's, the Bay Area. And I was like, I wonder, and I look them up on like LinkedIn, and I see you have 32 mutual connections. I'm like, oh, and I would look at where they work at. I'm like, oh, of course, almost every single time. I can't believe I'm actually kind of ashamed a little bit. Now, with that said, I know I didn't. I think I'd be more ashamed if I worked at Lucasfilm over the past 6 to 8 years. That's definitely worth being ashamed of. I left before things got really bad, but I'm still kind of ashamed. And I do feel bad for the fans. Like I said, I'm not butthurt by it, really. They could put out one bad series after another. I honestly don't care. I won't watch it. I do other things. But I do feel bad for a lot of fans that wanted to believe, that felt as strongly as they did, because I used to feel that strongly. And so I can see why a lot of people are mad. I think it's pretty justified. And I've known for a long time it's not going to get better. I could have told a lot of you this from my personal experience, what I've seen, what I know. It was never going to get better. I knew they were going to double down, quadruple down on their position and just keep going in that direction. And here's this. A lot of people are saying, okay, that's it. This episode 3 of Acolyte has killed Star Wars. I disagree with that one. I think we have yet to see Star Wars truly die. All right. They're going to take it one step further. Just you wait and see. We have yet to see their final form. This is not the end boss. All right, we have yet to actually see the end boss, the true bottom of the barrel of the abysmal thing they call creativity at that company. We have yet to see its final form. These are mini bosses. Leslie Headland, she's a mini boss. I think KK's a mini boss. Honestly, good question. Is Filoni the final end boss? Who knows? Who knows? But it is going to get worse. Just you wait. It is going to get worse. I guarantee it. So, well, that's all I have for this video. Thanks for tuning in. And from an ashamed ex-Star Wars crew member, I'll see you again next time.